Prayer as divine connection beyond ritual. This idea reaches into the heart of what it truly means to communicate with something greater than ourselves. Too often, people reduce prayer to a checklist, a routine, or a requirement. But when you strip away the structure, the memorized lines, the scheduled times, you find something far more intimate, far more powerful. Prayer, at its core, is not just about religion. It's not just about obligation. It's about connection. In both Christianity and Islam, prayer is built into the foundation of faith. In Christianity, prayer is often spontaneous. It's encouraged as a personal dialogue with God, a moment where you can speak freely, honestly from your soul. Whether you're asking for guidance, expressing gratitude, or simply venting your pain, it's all part of an ongoing relationship between the believer and the Creator. You don't need a script. You don't need a temple. All you need is a willing heart. Islam brings structure to prayer, 5 times a day at specific times with specific words and movements, but even within that discipline, the purpose isn't robotic repetition. It's presence, it's mindfulness. Each prayer, each salah, is a moment carved out of a chaotic day to remind you who you are and who God is. It's a sacred rhythm that brings you back to center, to humility, to purpose. See, it's easy to get caught up in the ritual. It's easy to focus on the mechanics, how to sit, what to say, where to look. But the real essence of prayer isn't in the ritual itself. The ritual is the doorway. The real power is what happens on the other side of that door. The connection, the stillness, the surrender. When a Christian kneels and cries out in the silence, they're not just following tradition. They're reaching beyond the seen into the unseen. When a Muslim places their forehead on the ground in sujud, they are in the most vulnerable position a human can take. And yet, in that moment, they are the closest to God. That is not just a ritual. That is transformation, the connection we're talking about. It transcends language, it transcends culture. You can pray in English, Arabic, Spanish, or complete silence. What matters is the intention behind it. The longing, the honesty, that sacred space in your heart where the noise of the world fades away and something eternal takes its place. You don't need to be perfect to pray. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to wear the right clothes or say the right things. All you need is truth, real, raw truth, and a willingness to be present. Because prayer is less about convincing God of something and more about letting God reveal something to you. It's in those quiet moments, those secret conversations, where you find strength you didn't know you had, peace you couldn't find anywhere else, clarity in the middle of confusion. You begin to realize this isn't just a spiritual task. This is a lifeline, a sacred connection between the human and the divine, and when you truly experience that connection, when you feel that presence, that grace, you'll understand, prayer was never just a ritual. It was always a return home. In Christianity, prayer is often described as an intimate conversation, moment between the soul and the Creator where words are not recited out of habit, but poured out from the depths of the heart. It is deeply personal, profoundly emotional, and strikingly raw. There are no barriers, no intermediaries, just you and God. That closeness, that openness, is what makes prayer in Christianity not just a religious act, but a sacred relationship. When a believer bows their head and begins to speak, they are not talking to a distant, silent figure. They are speaking to a loving Father, a friend, a guide. There is trust in that moment, a belief that they are being heard, that their voice matters. Whether whispered in a dark room, shouted through tears, or silently spoken within the heart, prayer becomes a safe space, a shelter. It's where joy is shared, pain is processed, and burdens are laid down. What's powerful is that there's no script required. You can use ancient psalms or your own trembling voice. You can quote scripture or simply say, God, I don't know what to say. Because in Christianity, what matters most in prayer is not how well you speak, but how honestly you show up. God isn't looking for polished performances. He's looking for your heart, for your real, unfiltered self, and that's why prayer becomes such a healing space. It gives room for vulnerability, for confession, for gratitude, for dreams. It's not just a place where you ask for things. It's a place where you listen, where you grow, where you shift. You go in carrying the weight of the world, and somehow you come out feeling lighter. Not because everything changed, but because you did. You don't need a church building to pray. You don't need a certain time of day. You can pray in the car, in your room, in the middle of a crowd. Because the relationship isn't limited by location, it's constant, it's alive, it follows you wherever you go. And when you take a moment to pray, even in the busyness of life, you're reminded that you are not walking alone. There's a presence beside you, a love that listens, a strength that holds you up when you feel like falling apart. Some prayers are filled with faith and fire, others with doubt and desperation. And both are welcome. Because prayer in Christianity isn't about perfect words. It's about a real connection. That's why the quietest prayers, the ones whispered through tears in the dead of night, often carry the most power. It's when you have nothing left but your voice and your faith that God often meets you the deepest. And sometimes prayer doesn't even involve speaking. It can be a moment of silence, a breath, a deep knowing. Because prayer isn't just talking to God, it's being with Him, sitting in His presence, trusting that even when you have no words, He hears the cry of your heart. Over time, that conversation becomes something more than just a moment. It becomes a way of life. You begin to carry that connection with you through every high and every low. You begin to lean into it, trust it, and that trust becomes unshakable. Because in the end, prayer in Christianity isn't about a formula. It's not about how many times you say it or how long you pray. It's about relationship, deep, personal, soul-stirring relationship. One that says no matter what you're going through, no matter how lost you feel, God is there, listening, loving, and never letting go. In Islam, prayer is more than a spiritual moment. It is a discipline, a structure, a divine order woven into the rhythm of daily life. 5 times a day, Muslims across the world pause whatever they're doing to turn toward one direction, to stand, bow, and prostrate before their Creator. It's not just an act of worship. It's a sacred reminder, built into the fabric of time itself, that no matter where you are or what you're going through, you are connected to something eternal. That connection, repeated and reinforced daily, transforms not just the soul, but the entire way a person lives. Each prayer or salah has its set time. From the first light of dawn to the darkness of night, these moments are carved out as checkpoints in a Muslim's day. They are opportunities to realign with the divine, to recenter the soul amidst the distractions of the world. It's not always easy. It requires discipline. It demands intention. It's a commitment that doesn't wait for convenience. But in that very commitment lies its power. The physical movements of Islamic prayer are not meaningless gestures. Each one carries deep spiritual weight. Standing reflects readiness. Bowing shows respect. Prostration, placing the forehead on the ground, is the ultimate symbol of humility, submission, and surrender. In that posture, the believer is at their lowest physically, but spiritually they are at their highest. It is a reminder that true elevation begins with humility, and in that moment of complete surrender, something powerful happens. The ego dissolves, the heart softens, the soul connects. This repetition throughout the day doesn't become monotonous when understood in its depth. Instead, it becomes transformative. The call to prayer is a call back to purpose. It's a call away from the chaos of the world, back to peace. It's a break from the temporary to connect with the eternal. The structure of prayer is not meant to restrict life. It's meant to give it meaning. It turns everyday routines into acts of devotion. It turns time into sacred opportunity. Prayer in Islam isn't just something you do with your body. It's something that involves your entire being, your thoughts, your heart, your soul. You can't truly pray without being present. You have to silence the noise, clear your mind, and enter into a state of consciousness where the only thing that matters is your connection with God. That practice over time builds character, It teaches patience, it shapes discipline, it trains the soul to resist the ego, to submit to a higher purpose, and even in its consistency, prayer offers personal connection. Before each prayer, Muslims perform a ritual washing known as wudu. This isn't just about cleanliness, it's symbolic. It represents purification. It's a physical way of saying, I'm leaving behind the dirt of the day, the distractions, the mistakes, the stress, and stepping into a sacred moment ready to be present with my Lord. In a world filled with noise and constant movement, Islamic prayer teaches stillness. In a society that glorifies self-reliance, it teaches surrender. In a culture that often promotes selfishness, it cultivates humility. And it does this not once in a lifetime, not just on special occasions, but every single day. 5 times a day. It becomes the heartbeat of a believer's life, syncing every breath, every thought, every moment with divine remembrance. And when prayer becomes more than just a task, when it becomes a daily meeting with the one who created you, you begin to live with more clarity, more peace, and more purpose. Because in the discipline of prayer lies the doorway to divine connection, and in that connection, the soul finds its true home. When you take a closer look at Christian and Islamic prayer, at first glance, the differences may seem obvious. Different languages, different postures, different traditions. But beyond the surface, beyond the form and the structure, lies a powerful truth. There is hidden unity in the way both faiths approach worship, a shared heartbeat that transcends the boundaries of religion. It's a truth many overlook, distracted by the external differences, yet it is this hidden unity that reveals something profound about the human soul and its relationship with the divine. Both Christianity and Islam see prayer as a way to connect with God. It's not just a religious task, it's a lifeline. In Christianity, prayer is open, flexible, and personal. It's a conversation with God, often filled with raw honesty, confession, gratitude, and longing. In Islam, prayer is structured, rhythmic, and deeply symbolic. It requires physical movement, stillness of heart, and total submission. Yet both forms of worship point to the same desire: to feel close to the Creator, to be seen, to be heard, and to find peace in His presence. What ties them together is not the form of the prayer but the function. In both faiths, prayer humbles the soul. It strips away pride. It forces the individual to pause and acknowledge that there is a higher power, one that is greater than our plans, our problems, and our pride. Whether one is whispering, "Father, forgive me," or bowing while reciting Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, the essence is the same. The heart is bending before God, that posture of humility. That's where unity begins. Gratitude plays a central role in both traditions. In Christianity, prayer is often filled with thanksgiving, recognizing God's grace and mercy. In Islam, the very act of prayer begins with Allahu Akbar, a declaration that God is the greatest, and continues with praises like Alhamdulillah, meaning all praise is due to God. Despite different languages, the message is the same. The believer pauses to recognize that every breath, every blessing, every moment is a gift from the divine. There is also shared silence. In both faiths, prayer can be more than words. It can be presence. Sometimes it's about sitting in stillness, listening, feeling, being aware of God. In Christianity, this is often called quiet time or meditation. In Islam, there is a moment after the prayer where one sits, reflects, and connects inwardly. That stillness isn't empty. It's full of meaning. It's where the soul breathes. Forgiveness, too, is a powerful theme in both traditions. Christians pray for forgiveness through the mercy of Jesus Christ, believing that grace is freely given. Muslims seek forgiveness through repentance, trusting in God's mercy and compassion. Different paths, but the same hope. The same yearning to be cleansed, to be renewed, to be brought back into alignment with the divine. Even the emotional experience of prayer finds common ground. Whether it's tears falling in the back of a church or a quiet sob during sujud in the mosque, both are signs of something deeper, a heart breaking open, not in despair, but in surrender. It's in those moments that the veil is lifted, and the believer feels truly seen by God. The unity between Christian and Islamic prayer doesn't mean the differences don't matter. They do. But within those differences lies a deeper harmony. A reminder that while the roads may look different, the destination is often the same: closeness to God, transformation of the soul, and the peace that only He can give. And in recognizing that hidden unity, we not only understand each other better, we begin to understand ourselves. Prayer, whether in Christianity or Islam, is not simply an act of speaking words or performing motions. It is a process of surrender, of laying down the burdens of the world and opening yourself up to something greater than you. It's a call to silence the chaos, to step away from the noise, and allow the divine to speak into your soul. In both faiths, prayer holds the power to transform, not only in the moments when you are on your knees or standing with your hands raised, but in the quiet spaces in between the moments of surrender that precede true peace. In Christianity, prayer is often seen as a personal conversation. It can be spontaneous, full of emotion, raw in its honesty. It's an expression of gratitude, of longing, of pleading. When Christians pray, they are speaking to God as if He is right there beside them. It's a prayer of trust and intimacy, where the heart bears itself, knowing that God is listening, that He sees them in their triumphs and failures. In those moments, prayer becomes a dialogue, a flow of connection that draws the believer closer to the divine presence. It's not about perfection, it's about being real. It's the beauty of being fully yourself in the presence of the Almighty, knowing that no matter how imperfect you feel, you are still loved, still heard, still valued. In Islam, the act of prayer is both physical and spiritual, an intricate practice that requires not just the words, but the body to submit, to bow, to prostrate. These physical acts are not mere rituals. They are reflections of the believer's heart. When a Muslim stands in prayer, they are standing in the presence of God. When they bow, they lower themselves in humility, acknowledging the greatness of God and their own smallness. And when they prostrate, their forehead touching the earth, it is a powerful symbol of complete submission, of offering their most vulnerable self to God. These movements, while structured and disciplined, are deeply transformative. They create space for deep reflection, for surrender, for a connection that moves beyond words and into the realm of spirit. In both traditions, prayer calls for discipline. Christianity teaches that prayer should not just be a reaction to life's difficulties, but a daily practice, a time to center yourself, a space to reconnect with God amidst the hustle of the day. Jesus Himself emphasized the importance of prayer, teaching His followers to pray without ceasing, to seek God's presence in every moment. Similarly, in Islam, the 5 daily prayers are not just obligations. They are a constant reminder, a built-in rhythm that shapes the believer's day and life. These prayers are not only moments of asking for guidance or forgiveness. They are an opportunity to check in with the divine, to realign oneself with what is important. It is an ongoing dialogue that does not cease once you rise from your prayer mat. It lingers with you like a presence you carry throughout your day. Surrender is at the core of both practices. In Christianity, prayer is an act of surrender to God's will. It's the act of saying, "Not my will, but yours be done," as Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. It's a release of control, a letting go of the desire to dictate life's outcomes, and a trust that God knows better. In Islam, surrender is built into the very structure of the prayer. Every movement in Salah is a physical manifestation of that surrender. From standing to bowing to prostrating, each position is a recognition that the believer is submitting their will to God's, accepting His plan, and finding peace in the process. This surrender doesn't make us weak. It makes us stronger. It transforms us. It opens our hearts to a higher understanding, to a deeper peace. In the silence of prayer, the noise of the world fades away, and what remains is the presence of God, the ultimate source of strength, love, and purpose. The power of prayer is that it brings us back to that truth over and over again. Whether in the quiet whispers of a Christian prayer or the disciplined movements of an Islamic salah, prayer invites us to pause, to breathe, to listen. It calls us to surrender, to trust, and to know that there is a higher purpose at work in our lives. It is in these moments of surrender, of being present with God, that true transformation takes place. When we let go and give ourselves fully to prayer, we open the door to peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that carries us through life's challenges, and a peace that stays with us long after we've finished praying. Prayer is not just a ritual. It's the key to a life well lived, a life rooted in surrender, trust, and connection to the divine. And when we surrender fully to that truth, we are never the same. Prayer in both Christianity and Islam is not just a ritual, nor is it merely an obligation to be fulfilled. It is, at its core, a deeply universal expression of the human condition. Whether you're a Christian kneeling in the quiet of a church or a Muslim prostrating in a mosque, prayer transcends religious boundaries and speaks to the very essence of what it means to be human. It is a universal language that resonates in every heart, regardless of faith or background, because it taps into something innate within all of us, the need to connect, to seek purpose, and to find peace. At its core, prayer is about connecting with the divine, but it's also about connecting with oneself. The simple act of pausing, whether 5 times a day in Islam or in moments of quiet reflection in Christianity, creates space to listen. In a world that often pushes us to act, to speak, to move faster, prayer asks us to stop, to listen, to be still. And in that stillness, we begin to hear not just our own voices, but the whisper of something greater. That is the universal power of prayer. It's a moment when all distractions fall away, and we allow ourselves to simply be, to reflect, to know that we are not alone. In Christianity, prayer serves as a direct line of communication with God. It's where a believer can speak honestly, whether in joy or sorrow, in thanksgiving or in desperation, without fear of judgment. There's no hierarchy in prayer. It's a personal connection. God is both the Father and the listener, someone with whom believers can share the deepest, rawest parts of themselves. In that connection, Christians find peace, guidance, and strength. Prayer becomes a safe haven, a space to be vulnerable, to confess, to ask for forgiveness, and to experience grace. It becomes a moment to reflect on life's blessings and challenges, and to seek divine wisdom in the midst of it all. In Islam, prayer takes on a similar yet distinct form. Salah, the ritualistic prayer performed 5 times a day, doesn't just serve as a personal connection with God. It is also a communal expression of devotion. The repetition of prayers throughout the day serves as a constant reminder of God's presence. It anchors the Muslim in every part of their day, calling them back to humility and purpose at regular intervals. The physicality of the prayer, bowing, prostrating, speaks to the soul's total surrender to God, an act of submission that is both humbling and transformative. But even in its discipline, there is a universal message. No matter what happens in your life, no matter how hectic the day may become, there is always time to stop and reconnect. The act of prayer is the ultimate reset button, inviting the believer to realign their thoughts and actions with the divine will. What both Christianity and Islam offer through prayer is the gift of peace and clarity. This universal truth behind prayer is not limited to words or rituals. It's found in the stillness that prayer creates. Prayer in all its forms creates an opportunity to step outside of time, outside of the noise, and into a moment of clarity where one can breathe deeply, reflect, and recalibrate. In those moments, the believer is reminded of their purpose, their strength, and their deep connection to the divine. But prayer's power goes beyond just connecting us to God. It connects us to each other. Whether in the shared experience of a church service or the collective prayer in a mosque, prayer unites believers across time and space. It fosters a sense of community, of shared faith and shared humanity. Even when performed in solitude, prayer invites us to consider the greater whole, the world around us, the people in it, and the shared longing for peace, healing, and connection. Ultimately, prayer reminds us that we are not alone. It draws us into a larger story, one that transcends individual experience and speaks to the collective human longing for purpose, truth, and inner peace. Whether in Christianity or Islam, prayer is the most profound expression of our desire to reach beyond the physical, to touch something eternal. It's a language understood by every human soul, an invitation to connect with the divine and with one another. And in the end, this is the true power of prayer, the reminder that no matter how isolated we may feel, there is always a way to connect. Through the act of prayer, we find our way back to ourselves, to each other, and to the one who created us.